everyone. Hello and welcome in. Tomorrow is the first official preseason game for the Minnesota Vikings for the 2021 season. And if you're wondering why we're doing a game preview for a game that is meaningless, it doesn't count, I figured what the hell, why not? Because if the Minnesota Vikings and every other football team gets to have a make-believe Saturday 3 times in the next month and practice everything that they need to practice for the regular season, we should have that opportunity today too. So that's what this video is about. This is our first unofficial game preview video of the season. I hope to do one of these for all of the regular season games. So for the first 3 videos, for the first 3 preseason games, we're just going to work out the kinks, figure out what the format is. Last year I brought up a whiteboard and I kind of had everything written down on that. I've sort of abandoned the whiteboard in recent months in favor of just making on-screen graphics and screen caps. So I don't know how we're exactly going to do it, but for today we're just going to go trial and error and see how it goes. Maybe something will stick by the time week 1 rolls around. So for today, what we're going to do is we're just going to look at the tail of the tape, and I'm going to talk about some of the things that I'm going to be looking for in tomorrow's game as it pertains to what happened in training camp and what I hope the Vikings can achieve in 2021, and some of the storylines that we've been talking about and how those could unfold going forward after this Saturday. So here we go, the tail of the tape. The Denver Broncos last year in 2020 ranked total offense 23 in the league. Passing was 26th. Total rushing was 13th. Defense was a lot better than Minnesota Vikings in terms of rankings. The Denver Broncos last year in total defense ranked 20th overall, 16th in passing defense, 25th in run defense. As far as the Vikings side goes, their column is much more favorable towards the top when we're talking about offensive categories. So in total offense, the Vikings finished 4th. Passing, they were 14th. Rushing, they were 5th. A very good and healthy rushing attack is what the Vikings are going to need once again this year. And it seems to be the case, given what we saw in preseason. This is likely to be a run-first team once again. For total defense, absolute dog shit last year. Mike Zimmer finally owned up to it. It was one of the worst defenses he's ever coached in his entire career. And given all the injuries, it's not all that much of a surprise as to how the defense unfolded for the entirety of the 2020 season, where we saw epic collapses towards the end against the New Orleans Saints and the Chicago Bears, especially in terms of run defense. So last year, total defense, Minnesota Vikings finished 27th overall. They were 25th against the pass and 27th against the run. They spent the better part of the offseason trying to fix that, the pass defense and the run defense. So that is going to be some of our main focus for this upcoming preseason game against the Denver Broncos. So let's go over some of the things that I'm going to be watching for and some of the things I think that we should pay attention to in the first preseason game. So very first at the top of my list is the Vikings offensive line versus the Broncos defensive line. So we come into a scenario where Christian Darrisaw likely going to be unavailable for the week 1 tilt against the Cincinnati Bengals. How is Rashad Hill going to look? Because I have my doubts that he's going to hold up over the course of the long haul. So really, this is going to be a significant test for the Minnesota Vikings on the left side of the offensive line. Ezra Cleveland's has been getting pushed around a little bit. Rashad Hill had a couple of bad reps in the joint practices with the Broncos. How is the offensive line going to hold up against Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, 2 really good pass rushers that are very smartly utilized by Vic Fangio, the head coach of the Denver Broncos, who is a defensive-minded coach in and of himself? There's a lot of parallels between the Vikings and the Broncos, go figure. But Von Miller likely to attack the right side with Brian O'Neill. Bradley Chubb will get a full dose of Rashad Hill. We'll see how long the starters actually play, but I'm hoping that we get to see enough of the offensive line starters and the defensive line starters for these 2 teams respectively to go at each other to see kind of where we are in terms of pass protection, because pass protection has sort of been, the pain point for the Minnesota Vikings for a number of years. And we sort of saw that again in the reports that came out of training camp, this past couple of weeks, that once again, run blocking, very good, very solid, wide open holes for Alexander Mattison, Dalvin Cook. But when it comes to pass protection, there's just not enough time in the pocket for the quarterbacks to throw, which results in them, being off target, having to rush, and basically just having pressure breathing down their necks almost immediately. So pass protection is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes throughout the entire game, just to see where, which members of the offensive line are able to pull their own weight and successfully keep the quarterback upright. Second thing I'm going to be looking at is going to be Greg Joseph. We have been told, according to reports, that he is going to be doing all of the kicking for Saturday's preseason game. So this is one of those, again, we said it with the offensive line. This is a very early test, as it's going to be an early test for Rashad Hill to see if he is capable of holding up and, holding his own, or are the Vikings going to have to do an emergency free agent hunt for another left tackle. Some people have mentioned in the comments on yesterday's video to go after Russell Okung, which isn't a bad idea, but we'll see how it goes. Same thing can be said for Greg Joseph. Riley Patterson will get his chance, I believe, depending on how Greg Joseph does tomorrow. Now, in the last training camp report that we saw, he went 5 for 5 on field goals with a long of 53. Can he replicate that in game situations? And I think that there's going to be a couple opportunities for this offense to convert field goals. So we'll see how he does. If he does well, I think we can, sort of breathe a sigh of relief, at least for right now. Next, we sort of talked about this with the Vikings offensive line and the pass protection. Interested to see how the Vikings passing game and their passing attack is going to look. Is the KJ Osborne hype real? I mean, he's mostly been playing against his own teammates. That's where he looked really good. And then he also looked pretty good against the Broncos in the joint practice with the 7-on-7s and, situations like that. I want to see that translate into an actual, full speed, real game simulation to see if that is actually something that we should be looking forward to. Is the KJ Osborne hype going to translate from training camp to the real thing? How is Kirk Cousins' timing with the other wide receivers? Is he going to be a little bit rusty? He did miss quite a few practices, not as many as Kellen Mond, but there was still some reports that I read that there were some throws that he missed, and there could be some that he would like to have back. So it'll be interesting to see how many opportunities he gets, which I think he'll get a fair share because this isn't a real game. Mike Zimmer is not going to be demanding that we run the ball over and over and over again. He's going to want to have some scenarios play out. Then the Vikings run defense is another thing that I'm going to be watching. Michael Pierce has looked phenomenal. This defensive line has looked phenomenal. Armin Watts, Danielle Hunter. Is Danielle Hunter going to play? I don't think so. Dalvin Tomlinson, Sheldon Richardson, Blake Lynch, just a huge name. I could name drop the defensive line all day. It has been so good, so revamped so far in training camp. We went from 0 good defensive tackles last year to I think we got like 5 on the roster now that are going to be very efficient, very good. So I'm very excited, especially to see Michael Pierce, because so far he looks legit. I had my doubts. So far he's sort of eased those doubts, and I think he's going to be good this year. And last but not least, Vikings situational offense. And this may sound a little strange to sort of bring this up because that's not really something that we think about in, regular season games, but in preseason games, it's all about practicing situations, right? Your 2-minute offense. You need to drive down the field to get a score. You need to get yourself into better field position, like out of the back of your end zone, like maybe you're stuck on the 5-yard line after a really good punt. It's all about situations. And what we saw over the course of training camp, especially this past week, was the Viking situational offense wasn't very good. So it'll be interesting to see if they've learned anything from training camp and if they can apply themselves in a real game situation to have better situational awareness and actually drive down the field, put some points on the board. That goes for every string, every unit, not just the first team offense, second team, third team. It'll be interesting to see how much they've progressed given what we know now after having training camp and the joint practices with the Broncos. So that's going to do it for this game preview. Not a lot to talk about because it is a preseason game and there's only so much that we can sort of roll back to. As we do these later on in the regular season, there will be more storylines. We'll have some more, statistical data that we can go over as far as where they are at this point in the season. Injuries will become a factor, all sorts of things. So this is the first game preview of the 2021 season. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next one.